Welcome to the secret underground laboratory, Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Edge, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory, Recovery and Salvage, and this month we're celebrating 3 years in our present location. The lab's new location has let us do a lot of things that simply weren't possible in the old place. One thing for sure is the Great Wall of Hammers, which may not seem like a big deal, but what we're actually able to do is put all the hammers in one place at one time. Now, they're not actually all the hammers, but it's one of every hammer, because I do have kind of a hammer problem. Now, without bringing up too many bad memories, the old lab was not the best place in the world to work. It was okay. We did a lot of good work there, but the main problem is only half of it was indoors. Most of the heavy work had to be done outdoors, either under a shed or really just out in the sun. Very dependent on the weather, and keeping the machines maintained was practically impossible. The humidity made rust a constant issue. Now, in our fully enclosed, climate-controlled secret underground laboratory, all that's changed, and we've been able to treat these machines with the dignity that they deserve. Now, since floor space is limited, all the machines have to be on wheels so they can be rolled out to where they can be used. Even though it looks a little crowded here, all of these can be pulled out without disturbing one of the other pieces. This is a Craftsman Model 113 radial arm saw. My father bought it in 1969, and this is the machine that I learned all about fast turning blades and woodworking. And to my father's credit, I still have all 10 fingers, every little piece of them. He had been a teenager in World War II and had taken a summer job in a furniture mill, where his job was operating a 14-inch DeWalt radial arm saw, which pretty much strictly an industrial machine. So when he started looking to build his own woodworking shop, the radial arm saw was his first choice. It's very versatile. You can cross cut with it, you can rip with it, all the things that people say about radial arm saws. For some reason, they've gotten a pretty scary reputation in the last 20, 30 years or so, and they've fallen out of favor. This one is my dedicated stacked dado head cutter. When you've got to cut dados across a long board, there's just simply no other way to do it that's actually safe and reliable. So that's what this gets used for. Occasionally, if I've got to do some production work where I'm cross-cutting wide boards, wider than my miter saw can do, which don't have a big one, then blade gets changed, and I set up and I make the cuts quick and easy. And again, retaining all my fingers. Now, when we moved into the new lab, one of the early projects was to clean up the radial arm saw and get it usable again. And this is actually the original Craftsman Dutch collection system. And this is the only place where it's been used, because it never was convenient, never did have the kind of shop vac that could handle that kind of thing. And it spent most of its life under a shed, that kind of work, where dust collection wasn't as critical as it is on an enclosed space. But the 50 years or so that this saw's been around, this dust collection kit followed it everywhere it went. One of the first projects my father had when he got this was he set the saw up on an old desk and made a base for it, this style, 2x4s that are milled at an angle so that they form the corner legs. Sometime in the past, termites actually got into that original saw base. So I duplicated the design Gives plenty of room, very strong, big footprint, so that when I put casters on it, it rolls easy. One of the modifications I've made was to replace the original Craftsman clamps for the fence with this design. This is actually a pony style pipe clamp with a piece of pipe on it, because the secret to getting good straight cuts on a radial arm saw is keeping your fence in one place once you've put it where you want it. The other key element of getting good cuts on the radial arm saw is the table has to be perfectly flat. And people have sometimes asked me if I meant level. I says no, flat in relationship to the track of the saw. In other words, your cut height or clearance has got to be the same here, 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 and here, and anywhere else that the blade might reach. I have a piece of plywood here that is actually made for concrete forming, where you need an architecturally grade, smooth concrete wall on the interior of a building, and that's what this coating is. It's a mold release that leaves you with a nice, clean texture on your wall, and it's incredibly flat as far as plywood goes. I keep little gauges like these that I can run underneath the saw blade, and that lets me know exactly where I've got the right height for whatever I'm cutting. The Porter Cable Bandsaw is the newest member of the team. Got it sometime earlier in this year, and I've got a full video about it if anybody's curious. This is the Craftsman Model 113 table saw. It's about the same age as the radial arm saw. When we moved into the new lab, this was one of the highest priorities to get this saw back in good working order. Took everything apart, completely disassembled it, polished all the surfaces that needed to be polished, made sure everything was nice and oiled and clean and put back together. And then the number one priority was dust control, because this thing makes an awful lot of sawdust. And in this enclosed space in here, you wouldn't be able to breathe, much less see, when this saw was running. Now, dust control and contractor saws really don't go together well. But the first thing I did was build this hopper catch basin on the bottom of it, so that all the sawdust that fell down, which is the majority of it, would be collected. Got this pipe here that hooks right up to the vacuum hose. I could have left it down here at the bottom, but I don't really like bending over that much. The next step was sealing up all the holes in the case. This one right here is how you get to the nut on the main arbor, but it's a big hole for sawdust to come flying out of. So I lined the inside of the case with foam fiberboard. The biggest challenge is the backside where the motor and the belt are. Now, in ordinary use, there's a rooster tail of sawdust coming out the back here while the saw is working. To combat that, it's not actually possible to seal it up so that the vacuum can draw it all away, but you can create a series of shields which blocks it and the sawdust falls down to the bottom. This is actually carpet padding. It's cheap, easy to work with, and very plentiful. You know, anybody who does any kind of carpet work, they're going to have hundreds of square yards. They throw them away because they can't use the scraps for anything. The main drawback to this is that if I want to make a tilt cut, I've got to take all this apart. Fortunately, I don't have to do tilt cuts very often, and since we've been here in the new lab, I don't think I've ever had a situation where I had to. So, this toggle switch goes to my router table, which I installed here on this outside apron, It's a really great space-saving measure. When I put the casters on this the first time, I put swivel casters in the back and plate casters up here, and discovered that that was pretty much unworkable. If you don't have four wheels that can move in any direction, you really can't steer it any place where you really need it to be. Because I had the casters, I thought maybe I would need these jack legs, which made from a bunch of Harbor Freight 4-inch clamps. Work out really well for this kind of thing. Piece of steel tubing and this knob up here, because again, I don't like bending over to do stuff. Now, as it turned out, the jack legs really weren't all that necessary, because it takes a good bit of effort to actually move it, although it does roll pretty smooth. Where this came in handy is when I've got to hook up a outfeed table to it. I can adjust the height up and down inch or so one way or the other and get everything perfectly lined up. This is the Packard Precision 12-speed drill press. Everything around here is on wheels. People like to talk about barn finds. This was more of a shed find, and the floor of the shed had caved in. And the shed was on the side of a hill, so the back side of it was about 4 feet lower than the front side. And I had to climb down there and carry it out like it was a set of barbells. That was, of course, a long time ago. I think if I had to do that today, I'd go find somebody to help me. It's a Model 91 9T with a Morse taper spindle of 2, 3/4 horsepower. You can see the serial number. Made in 1980. And that's just about all I know about this machine. Apparently there was a company named Packard who made machine tools, drill presses, lathes. I've even heard of a Packard table saw. And I think they were in Pennsylvania. But information is kind of difficult to find because there's so many companies with Packard in the name. Hewlett Packard, Packard Bell, Packard Electric, all up and down the country. There's even a company called Packard Machinery today, but I don't think they're related at all to the people who made this drill press. But apparently sometime in the 70s, someone named Sterling bought the name, took all the production to Taiwan, and then became an importer of fairly good grade machine tools, such as this one. And you can find quite a few of these used today if you look around, and mostly they're with people who are trying to figure out where it came from and who made it. Still no clue. The Pulley Systems, the conventional 3 pulleys with 4 steps each. Easy to change speeds. Low speed of 280, goes all the way up to 3650, which is the maximum speed of the motor. My only real complaint about it is that the tightening mechanism is pretty anemic and tends to slip in use, especially when using larger forcer bits and stuff like that. You can imagine the condition of a drill press that's been sitting on the ground on the side of a hill under a shed for a couple of years. But once we were in the new lab where it doesn't rain, I was able to take it apart, clean it up, rewire it completely, and now it does as good a service as it ever did. The rollers, that's a different matter. What I discovered was that I had to do a lot of drilling in tall stuff, table legs, things like that, which meant this table had to be rolled around to the back. And if I wanted to store it against the wall, that wasn't always convenient. So what I did was made a fixture on the bottom here for ball casters. That leaves me able to swing the table back, put it back against the wall where it takes up the least space. It wouldn't be fair to not mention this Ryobi Miter Saw. had it 25 years, and in that time I've worn out 5 cordless drills. And I haven't managed to break or wear out this piece yet. This is a Craftsman lathe manufactured by King Sealy, probably somewhere around 1950 or so. As a little bit of tool trivia, King Sealy is also the company that made Thermos brand thermos bottles. Found this in a flea market, I believe it was Pasadena, Texas, sometime in the 90s. And it was also in the same condition you usually find stuff like that, a little rusty, no great wear. It's one of the interesting things about machine tools that are intended for the home shop. You very seldom find one that's worn out. They may be neglected, they may be rusty, they may have missing or broken parts, but you very seldom find worn out pieces because in somebody's home shop, nobody really has enough time to use the machines long enough to actually wear them out. This lathe is an important tool in the lab, and it gets a lot of use, but not enough use to justify a permanent place on the floor, which is why I've got this little dolly built into it and made so that it can clamp to the Ryobi bench, even put wheels on the Ryobi bench so it can be moved around. In order to be able to adjust it quickly and easily, I made this motor mount where the motor slides back and forth for each different belt pulley. And when we're done with it, it packs up just as easy and goes back in the corner where it stays until it's needed again. So this is Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory, Recovery and Salvage, and thank you for watching our 3rd anniversary video where we meet the crew, the real workhorses of the Secret Underground Laboratory. Appreciate it very much if you would like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.